You're watching Open Agenda. Here's our host, Joe White.
Welcome to Open Agenda. I'm your host, Joe White. In this episode, we're going to talk about the county budget, where that is in process. We do have the county executive's proposed budget, although we have a lot of questions. We also want to talk about some of the misinformation out there about the Watipkin Park out on the west side of the county. The state is still moving forward with funding a state park out there. So in the studio with me is Mr. Mike Goldberg from Del Mar, Dr. Jovanosa, Salisbury. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
So, look, this is a crazy time of year. We even started talking about this back in January, that this was going to be a feverish time of year. We didn't have the audit from 2024. We had our delegate talking about raising property taxes, breaking the revenue cap. Now our executive has made presentations, all different types of options, and now even actually proposed a budget, which after seeing the audit, we actually have quite a bit of a surplus. Mm-hmm. Look, we're in campaign season for sure, right?
It seems like it always is campaign season.
Yeah, but the rhetoric right now is just high. Mm-hmm. Is the message out there for folks that don't take our word for it, don't take their word for it, go find these answers out for yourself?
That should be it. The problem is, let's be honest, a lot of regular people don't have the time and resources to really dig into it like maybe we do. And so that leaves the public sometimes at the mercy of the sound bites that local coverage does give certain things for a very quick snippet.
And you know what? You bring up a good point, and I want to say something. I'm really disappointed with our local news coverage, the newspaper, the two major television stations.
Yeah.
They basically regurgitated a press release that the county executive put out about Watipkin. Didn't do any, to my knowledge, they didn't do any of their own research because it does not equate out to what we found with transcripts.
No, there's no investigative reporting out of the legacy media here.
It was literally a copy and paste of the executive's point.
It was.
And like one colleague of mine put it, wow, they're doing the North Korea, they're making North Korea look good as far as just parroting a dear leader's line with no semblance of any separation whatsoever.
It wouldn't pass a plagiarism test in your history class, would it?
Not in my class.
Yeah. One of my mentors in high school, who's passed away, he was a history teacher. He always spoke about hunting down primary source. So if the news agencies aren't going to get any primary source, I wish they would just stay out of it. But two, you said people don't have a lot of time, but they could watch at least some of the meetings on PAC 14, even if it's just days later.
Sure.
I'd tell you one thing I've done is I listen to it like it's a podcast.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I put it on in my car. I got to drive 30, 45 minutes. I can't watch it, but I can listen to it.
To be fair, no one is as entertaining and handsome as us, so that explains part of the drop. But I see your point.
Yeah. Well, they don't have to look at us either.
What are you talking about?
Yeah. Well, the other thing too is it kind of brought up with Watipkin. There's the state is moving forward with this $3.3 million purchase. The delegation went in front of the county council just this past meeting to talk about that they don't have any hand in it. It was odd to see Barry Beecham not really say much because when Julie was taking...
It's not odd if you've watched sessions in Annapolis, but...
Well, when she was taking credit for it back in February, there was it was. I guess it was cool to be part of it, and now it's not.
Well, he was before he was against it, right? As the old line goes.
Yeah.
I know the other night you went to the Salisbury City Council. That was crazy, right?
We spend a lot of time on our show, obviously, critiquing and analyzing the county politics in general, obviously. But I got to tell you, I think the city gives the county a run for its money, no pun intended. Because we were treated to quite a spectacle at the last city council meeting. We have several vacancies on city commissions, right? And commissions, to some extent, they can be very labor intensive if a commission is very active. I'm on one for the city. You have a human rights commission. You have the green team. You have the bicycle transportation commission. In the last couple of sessions, there have been citizens who have put their names forward on commissions that have had vacancies for months, if not years. And the city council seems to have gotten in the recent sort of habit of unilaterally, or at least some members of the city council, the majority obviously, have gotten into the habit of denying some of those citizens the chance to be on commissions. And the theory that has generally been proposed is that they are seen as too critical of the city council in public.
Yeah, these are people who are already active.
These are people who come to meetings, who talk in public about policy. One of them was Mr. John Rankin, who was put forward, I believe, by the mayor for the election commission. The other was Mr. Michael Langford, who we've had on the show. But he's a real avid bicyclist, been very active in the community on other initiatives. Ideally, the best kind of person you would want on that kind of commission. At this meeting of the city council, certain members, particularly President Deshaun Dowdy and
Michelle
Gregory, District 4, effectively said that they had heard certain concerns and criticisms of Mr. Langford in the community that would give them reservation. Now, again, I can't imagine somebody freaking out to the point where they were worried that a person would be put on the bicycle commission. I mean, is the concern that he's a jeeper on the weekends?
No, somebody who helps the homeless and is an artist, and he's like, now he's too controversial for the bicycle.
But let's be very clear, folks. This needs to be said. The big issue that everyone knew in that room is that Mr. Langford, like us, and particularly me as a city resident, have been very critical of the very unethical, we feel, close connections that Council President Deshaun Dowdy, and in particular, Michelle Gregory and Council Vice President Angela Blake have had with developers and how they've ethically run the city agenda. We are very public in that. We don't hide it. That's our right as citizens, and that's something we encourage people who have concerns to do more of. But they basically said that they felt that he and others lacked certain qualities or lacked community support and character to be on these commissions. But then one council member Gregory, actually said that she would be, quote, happy to discuss the matter in private.
Yeah.
Which is, to me, mind-blowing.
The lack of transparency.
The lack of transparency, right?
Yeah.
You're saying that this public commission position that is, again, for the public, that needs to be done in public, can't be discussed except in private.
What was the reason for denying this man? I mean, I don't get it. But I understand why y'all have that on y'all conscience, because y'all don't do things for the right reason.
And I do think it is rude to come back and to dismiss me, to physically dismiss me. But also, I think that is just rude. And so just given that, I am going to move forward, because I'm going to move forward. Yeah. And then, of course, we have council comments and ministers.
As you dismiss me. I like it. No, I think this idea of not allowing people to say their mind has become a consistent pattern, which I think has reached a level, if you let me finish without interrupting, of not just disrespect. I think it's starting to play to the effect of allowing people to have an honest debate. And that's
when did I not allow someone to speak their mind?
Have you not been watching PAC 14?
The things that have been brought to mind, like, not only personally, I took out my personal convictions that have things that have been brought to me personally that have disrupted my life. I took those out, and the decision that I made was because other things that people have brought to my attention. And this is, again, taking out the personal grievances that said that persons have done against me, Deshaun Dowdy, and Council President Deshaun Dowdy. I took those out of this decision.
I will be happy to speak with you offline, but like President Dowdy, I do not feel comfortable speaking these things into a public meeting.
Professor, I want to ask you a question. Question.
It's not professor time. Go ahead.
Well, but this one, maybe.
Yeah.
What is it about politician with lack of ethics that makes you so thin-skinned? Because we have an overabundance of that in this county and in the city.
And you know what's funny? To go back to a point that we've talked about before, this is irrespective of like party and ideology.
Oh, yeah, totally.
It's just people who fundamentally, this is my view, they're extremely joyless people. They take themselves seriously to a point of parody. They have such deep-seated insecurity and mental illness, as far as I'm concerned, that they can't even hold basic public decorum on something as simple as explaining their position.
If they were secure, confident people, then they'd be able to effectively deal with being questioned, and they'd make a case for whatever their position is. But they're incapable of doing that. So I have to ask the question, to the people of the city of Salisbury and Wicomico County. Folks, are we really selecting the best people that we
From
can
either
get?
side.
From either side.
The party has nothing to do with
Nothing
it.
to do with it.
Nothing
No.
to do with it.
And just to be clear, I've been criticized by some, in my own sort of political circles for the critique. And the point that I have always made, and our friend Jim Atkins and others have made this before as well, is that the interests of the community should always be first. And if the interest of the community comes from somebody who might be a different party or different ideology, or just maybe I don't even like them as a person, but they're doing a good job in the job, that's what should be at
Especially
issue.
on a local level.
On a local level,
This is
because-
not national politics. This is why we don't cover that in the
No,
show,
no.
because the
But let's
rhetoric
face
from
it,
that would be
whether it's
terrible.
national politics or local politics, it's all about power. And when we have people whose objective is to obtain and exercise power over others, and this is what people need to understand. There's a fundamental, I think, evil motivation behind all politicians. These are people who want power.
So speaking of power and thin-skinnedness, let's take some time. I want to bring Jim Atkins in. Let's talk about the county executive's budget proposal and just where that process is now and where it's going to finish up just mid-June. Okay.
Terrific.
good.
He can have my seat.
All right. All
I'm
right.
going to go take a bike ride.
So stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Open Agenda. I'm your host, Joe White. As we approach the budget season for Wicomico County and we're reviewing the county executive's proposed budget for fiscal year 26, there's a lot of questions and some of the information just doesn't line up coming out of the fiscal 24 audit we just received. So to help cover some of this, I brought in Mr. Jim Atkins from Mardella, Dr. Joe Venosa from Salisbury. Thank you, gentlemen.
Certainly. Good morning.
So it does not feel like we have all the cards on the table as far as why the budget is proposed the way it is, really how much money is in some of the accounts. I know as many meetings as the three of us attend and many others in our group, we have more questions than answers right now. But there's some questions that stick out further than others. And Jim, I know I talked to you about specifically the frontline employees. It looks like they're getting a 3% cost of living adjustment, a COLA, with a 2% raise. But that's not across the board, right?
No, that's not across the board. And the interesting part about it is starting July the 1st, they get the 3% cost of living COLA raise. They don't get the 2% raise until January the 1st.
Okay, 6 months into the
6
fiscal
months
year.
into the fiscal year. So that is interesting in how that was developed and separated. So the majority of the hourly employees are getting a total of a 5% raise. Once again, this year in the budget, we have department heads that are looking at between 16 and 25% increases in their salaries.
Yeah, Joe, I mean, we just covered this with the Salisbury University episode.
Did you?
Yes. Yeah, I know you weren't here for that episode, but we had students in who are just worried about their tuition costs, which are like taxes for a college student. And yet the administrators, as they're cutting their budget, the administrators are seeing 20% or 10% increases in pay. I feel like we're seeing the same thing here.
From last year?
And this is where I have a question. Just 2 months ago, our county executive is having budget hearings and presentations with the Board of Education and the Delmarva Conservative Movement, saying we may have to break through the revenue cap. And now we're off, and we see there's a big surplus, and all of a sudden there's these big raises.
So we're just
Well,
giving certain people.
I don't think we know where we're at.
Yeah,
And
no.
I definitely don't think our county council has asked enough questions to have verification that they know where we're at. They might know where we were 18 months ago.
They're playing catch up.
Well,
Wow,
and we're
if-
spending money we don't know we have.
Well, one of the four options when the quote unquote budget meeting was held was to flatline the county expenses in order to pay for the Board of Ed.
Okay. Yeah.
And the executive stated she had not done that. She had fully funded the Board of Ed and not broken the revenue cap and stayed within her limitations. But when you start looking through the budget, you notice that there are very few detailed line items in departments
Yeah.
about what they're planning on doing this year.
Well,
So
specifically,
they flatlining
you brought up county roads.
county roads. There's,
A lot of that was just put into miscellany, which could go anywhere.
I don't know who miscellaneous is, but she's getting an awful lot of money, it
Well,
seems.
she's number, Jim showed me. She's number 3 on the list of expenses. As a business owner, you want a budget, and if you have to decide that you're not going to spend something in one area because you had to spend it in another, you want to know why you made those decisions.
Right.
You start throwing large chunks of money into miscellany,
Yeah.
then you don't have any record of even successes you had or mistakes you had, just as a historical record.
Right, yeah. It's very unnerving that much money would be devoted to such a amorphous pot.
yeah,
That-
it's the third largest budget item in her budget, miscellaneous. And in the past, when the budget has been more detailed and projects are shown for each department, if something comes up, the executive comes back to the council and they need an amended budget.
Well-
But they're just starting off this budget with this huge pot of money over in the miscellaneous column.
But let's also remember, we had our appointed delegate, Barry Beecham, and our county executive he was about 5 months ago, her about 2 months ago, crying poor that we didn't have enough. The revenue cap was holding us back. We've heard it from the Greater Salisbury Committee. Oddly, we've heard it from the Wacomico County Chamber of Commerce, which
You're the first county executive who has talked about the elephant in the room. That, all by itself, deserves applause. Thank you for that. The elephant in the room, we have in our GSC 2030 plan, we address the revenue cap, and all we ask for is that a blue ribbon panel, just like the one that we've assembled to come and talk to you tonight, made up of community leaders, takes a look at that public policy that was implemented more than 20 years ago and simply ask the community, is this still appropriate public policy?
Good evening, Barry Beecham, county resident. And as far as I guess the elephant in the room here, everybody's talking about, we need funds, and the funds are lack thereof. I'd say the elephant in the room is the tax cap. And I'm just curious, how many people here would be willing to have their property taxes raised? To support any property, because and that's really what we need to really look at. And for me to say, hey, I'm in favor, of a tax increase, no one wants to hear that, but what I really like to see, everyone in this room that I looked at raise their hand and they don't mind property tax cap, being taken away.
Revenue cap.
Or revenue cap, I'm sorry. Yeah, so basically I would say that's where we're going to have to look, as much as no one wants to talk about it, and I certainly don't want to be the guy to raise my hand and say it, but really that's where we're at.
So maybe it is time to look at the revenue cap, and is it the best policy? Is it the best thing? And
Barry, I got to address this with you. I'm sorry. You sit here today and bragged about everything you voted against up there, and I appreciate that. But you come to our CIP meeting and basically endorse getting rid of the revenue cap.
Well, let me address that. I turned around and said that.
I know what you said. I watched it.
Okay, well, but put it in context. I said the elephant in the room.
I know.
is
I just watched it again yesterday.
The revenue cap, and the truth of the matter is that's the only thing that can be the revenue cap can be burst over. Is that correct? Education. Because it's education is what I was referring to.
It can be education, yeah.
Right. Well,
But
so
the citizens voted for the revenue cap. They didn't vote for a revenue cap to be bust over by education.
Well, the truth of the matter is the 2%, I think, was bad legislation from the start, because if you look at inflation and you look at the 2%, I don't think you can hold ground. So
there has to be another motive. But to my point, you go from crying poor to we can't spend it fast enough. I'm also looking here. We have a new chief of EMS at an expense of $88,000 per year. But what if we don't have the money next year? You think we're just going to cut that position? I mean, that's a commitment.
But the second question to that is, what is that position? We have not had that position before. It is a new position created in this budget. what is that person going to do?
Oh, I'm going to tell you what it's for. It's the beginning of the volunteer fire departments being phased out in this county. And as a very active member, not member, but active citizen in my neck of the woods, I'm telling you right now, this is the first step of them phasing you out.
Well, and it's interesting because given the executive's past hostility toward the volunteer fire departments in terms of basically flat funding them and then denying it and then, reprioritizing these sort of initiatives, the other question becomes not only what the position represents as far as attacking our volunteer fire departments and their existence, but who will be put in that position.
Well, Julie did say at one time that they should just go out and start barbecuing more chicken.
Yes.
So we
So
may
how
need
much
to
chicken
see.
is this new
I
position?
don't
gonna
see a
be
chicken chef on
barbecuing?
here anywhere.
It's a lot of chicken.
You
Yeah.
could buy a lot of
It's
chickens
a
at
lot of
Costco.
chicken.
With,
Yeah.
with
And
that.
and if you remember, if you go back 2 years to her first year in office, she was requesting a EMS fire director position in
Yeah.
her office.
It was a public safety
Yes,
czar that
exactly.
had no detail other than give
Exactly.
me the
And the
position.
county volunteer fire departments are very appreciative of the money they get. They need the money they get to support them and to operate. But the county does not own an ambulance. They do not own a fire truck. They do not own a fire station. So these are all privately owned by the 11 volunteer companies in the county. And does she actually think
So maybe it is time to look at the revenue cap, and is it the best policy? Is it the best thing? And
that an EMS director is going to tell 11 independent companies what they're going to do?
I want to flip that answer. Do 11 independent companies want to have a paid
Exactly.
county employee trying to tell them what to do?
Yeah,
Because as someone who goes and helps barbecue the chicken myself, sometimes, who helps raise some of the money
I help
with
eat
them.
it. So
Yeah.
Well, if you buy it, you're a big part of it. I'm telling you, this is not what they want. And if they're being sold a bill of goods, they're going to be real surprised in a couple of years. I mean, how about even a deputy director of emergency services at a cost of $100,000 plus per year in salary? You're talking adding $200,000 in salary into a county that 2 months ago was talking about breaking the revenue cap. I'm astonished because you can't come up with a 50-page budget overnight. My point to everyone out there right now is this is the smoke and mirrors game you're seeing. And where the rubber's meeting the road, go to page 48 of the budget, where it begins to list the 28 capital improvement projects that the county executive is laying out that will not be paid out of a capital fund. It will be paid out of what they call PAYGO. PAYGO is leftover operating expenses that can be used.
It's a savings account.
It's a savings account that you can use to pave a road.
for
Go through that. I mean, 28 projects. These are not small things. Some of them are water towers in Pittsville, paving certain roads. But this is how you use political influence to benefit your close inner circle.
correct.
But not with your money.
No, with our money.
With our money.
Well, and again, and that's unfortunately not a new thing, right? This is the spoils system that we often teach in history classes. But the thing that really disturbs me, to go back to your early point, is that this helps better explain for us and the public why the revenue cap issue was being banged so loudly months ago. Because down the road, as you said, if they're going to get rid of and go after our volunteer fire departments, if they're going to put these massive sort of politically connected projects on the docket, it's going to require a lot more money than what we currently have in our accounts.
Yeah.
And that maybe helps explain why certain people close to the executive are so gung-ho on raising taxes through getting rid of the revenue cap.
Go ahead, Jim.
Well, let me throw the cynic's opinion on this. You cry wolf. We have no money. We have no money. We can't do this. We can't do that. We can't fund the Board of Ed. And then 2 months later, I fully funded the Board of Ed. We've got a balanced budget. How great are we? You know, so you've got people thinking that you've solved the problem
Right.
that you never had to begin with.
Yeah. And you may be creating the next problem 2 years from now.
Yes.
which
Yeah, I think
you'll blame on somebody else.
If you look at the budget, some of the numbers in the budget are not complete because we just got a budget audit for fiscal year 24 a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, just a few
so
weeks
how can you make a new budget for the following year before you found out what you did the year before?
Unless that's what you want to do,
That's
to hide the money and
Yes.
basically to keep our friend miscellaneous.
Well, look,
in
you talk
good
about
standing.
hiding money, or at least it's not in plain sight. And I think with government, you need to be extra vigilant, all
Yeah,
cards on
always,
the table,
always,
right?
yeah.
We were just at the last county council meeting when the Public Works came and asked for $2.3 million for emergency dredging of one of the 3 sections of Wacomico River. But every year, almost $400,000 gets put into an operating fund.
The council approved somewhere in the range of $350,000 every single year since 2020, in the CIP, which is the plan document, but we also put it in the capital budget. So I'm not so sure, because I don't always know those processes. We approve it. I assume these monies go into some type of
So those have been
a
set
fund
aside. Yes.
where it's set aside. So that's about $2.1 million in the capital budget that's been approved, from my knowledge, since 2020. And so I'm curious as to why we're all of a sudden caught off guard.
So there's a little over $1 million, about 1.2 million should be in there now. The request was for 2.3, but to leave alone the 1.2 that's already in there. We're spending money that's not in a budget. Our county council approved this. A lot of them identify as conservatives. I don't think that's a very conservative move. At the very least,
No, but it's a stupid move.
Well, I don't know, because honestly, they didn't even have the one committee, the water committee, to come in to talk about it.
Yeah.
The executive didn't bring them in. The council didn't require it, and they needed an answer that day. This is how you make mistakes. So there's supposed to be $1.2 million in the fund. They need 2.3, but they got 2.3, not 1.1. And I mean, it's easy math to say, hey, look, if you only need 2.3 and you have 1.2 in your account, that's all you need.
Well, the thing you need to watch with that is that the initial briefing book spoke that the county was going to ask for $7.5 million.
It was in the original capital improvement plan.
Yes, but also in the briefing book that came out a week before the council meeting.
Yeah.
So it was all in there, $7.5 million for phase 1 and phase 2. The caveat in that was that we're asking for $7.5 million. We may come back in May and have to ask for more. So then they come to the council 3 days later, and they only want 2.3 million because they're only going to do one phase. Now in the budget, they have $7.5 million in the budget for the next phase.
When they already have the 2.3
Yes.
handed to them.
Yeah.
Well,
So I mean, you know,
this is crazy.
this is going to be a $10-12 million
Yeah.
budget
Yeah.
function. It has to happen, and nobody argues
Yeah.
that it has to happen. The river has to be opened. It has to be
Yes.
dredged.
Yeah.
It's a major economic driver for this county.
Yeah, no one's against the
What's
concept.
arguing is that nothing was done for 7 years
Mm-hmm.
to move this dirt, that they're going to have to pay an outside contractor now to move. For 7 years, nobody looked at it, nobody saw anything, and the money that the council gave, $350,000 a year for $2.1 million.
Well, let's talk about communities for a second. You know, to that point, that Sharps Point community down near Fruitland is now, and I've mentioned this before, is now slated to have 60,000 dump trucks ride by their
Yes.
their homes in the next 5 months, right? Well, another community, the Watipkin community, is now finding out just how involved the county executive has been in getting a state park for this county. I want to take a little break. When we come back, I want to bring in Mike Goldberg, because his work history, this is something he has a lot of experience in. And I want to talk about just how underhanded some of the information and the misinformation from the county executive's office has come out. So we stick around, Jim. So stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Open Agenda. So now that we've talked about the budget, we also want to talk about another major community item that's come up, and that's the Watipkin Park, the state park, more or less. So in order to talk about that, I wanted to bring in Mike Goldberg from Del Mar. Jim, thanks for sticking around. Sure. Mike, I know that you have spent a lot of time at county parks, and your background in banking and doing due diligence, there's a lot of information you've been able to garner. Plus, we have some transcripts and stuff. I wanted to talk a little bit about the conversation that the county executive had at the mayor's roundtable just last Friday, the end of April, with the Greater Salisbury Committee. And in that presentation, she shares that she actually drove DNR around the county back last November. And I'll be honest with you, she hasn't come out and denied she's done this, but she also definitely has not spoken publicly that she has done this. It sounded like the goal of this ride around was to maybe see if they want to do Pirates Wharf or Pemberton Park or even Poplar Hills coming back up. It's like Bob Culver comes back up around. I mean, what do you think, Jim? I mean, is she telling the whole story here?
No, that's the problem, that the story changes from week to week. You get drabs and pieces of what's going on. You get the representatives from the state, our representatives and our senators come before the council.
Which they just did at the last meeting.
They just did 2 weeks ago, and were asked at the end of their presentation what they knew about this.
There's a lot of chatter about the proposed new state park out at Watipkin.
I mean, I'll be glad to. So that is a project that was approved by the Board of Public Works. I, as well as my colleagues that represent that district in the state, are aware and have received emails from concerned citizens over the state. While they got approval from the Board of Public Works, they've not completed the sale. DNR will be constructive and work with the citizens in the area there. What I don't think is going to happen is I don't think the project's going to be killed.
And to a person, they all knew nothing about it before we knew. They found out at the same time. Well, that's not, maybe it's not a lie, but it's not the truth. It's somewhere in the middle. This has been going on now for at least 5 months. People knew about it. The Public Works was informed of it. DNR was down here, as you said, last fall and did the tour.
With the county executive.
With the county executive. And one of the representatives from the county told me that that was chosen, Watipkin was chosen because the state wanted a water access park. Now, the last I looked, Pirates Wharf has a lot of water around it.
That's not even fully developed yet.
That's not fully developed. It has a state highway that takes you to it, versus county roads in Watipkin that a lot of people, if you're not a local person, don't even know where Watipkin is or how to get there.
And Pirates Wharf is 10 minutes closer to Salisbury.
10 minutes closer. Right.
Look, I'll tell you, as a taxpayer in Wacomico County, I think Pirates Wharf would be a nice thing if we had money to spend. But I mean, it's a lot of grass to mow, a lot of park to maintain. And honestly, it was a pet project of Bob Culver, late executive, who's pulling a lot of the same plays, or Julie's pulling a lot of the same plays that he pulled. And I'll be honest, it's frustrating beyond belief to see a press release like you have there that states that there's this misinformation. Then you look at the transcript of the conference call that she had with the Public Works, and then for her to come out and say she didn't want to challenge the governor. I mean,
yeah, it wasn't the right place to challenge the governor. It's exactly the right venue that you ask the tough questions.
Well, not only that, but the Board of Public Works on February the 12th, when she claimed she didn't want to challenge the governor, it was all said, done, put to bed.
That was a done deal.
It should have been challenged before.
I wonder if the folks out in Watipkin know that there's a new fishing pier coming to the county Watipkin Park.
Right.
And, you know, we already have a park there.
A park or boat ramp.
Mike and I shot
yeah.
a segment last year out there.
Yes.
It's a nice little park that's getting a new fishing pier. It's getting a new soft launch for kayak.
Yep.
Upgrades to the parking lot. Upgrades to the bulkheading. To tie this back to our delegation, I mean, our appointed delegate, Barry Beecham. And look, his appointment came through the Republican Central Committee that's really run by the Delmarva conservative movement, that I'm not convinced is a conservative movement at all, at least from spending side. But, you know, he sat silently, virtually silent in that meeting when it came up about this park. But our understanding, at least if you look back at Julie's post back in February, in real time back then, was that he had several conversations with DNR.
Yeah.
Even Julie mentions that Bunky Lefflin, who's her director of administration, was number 2. I can't speak to that, but there are connections in the DNR.
Yes,
This could
lot.
not have been a surprise.
There seems to be a lot of mystery that's shrouding this. You know, it seems to me that it's implausible that the Wicomico County government, the county executive, had no prior knowledge that this site, the Watipkin site, was under consideration. You know, she specifically mentioned that they had looked at, I believe, Poplar Hill, Pirates Wharf. No mention of this, but I find it implausible. This didn't just come out of thin air.
It would be like you go out with a real estate agent and you look at 4 homes and you don't buy any of them, but you let your realtor just pick out the 5th home for you and you're going to go move into it. No one would do that. It defies logic, and yet she's sticking to these guns. And my concern is this is the same office that is supposed to lead us through a budget session. And just as we talked in the last segment about budget, 1 minute we're broke, we're going to raise taxes on everybody. The next minute we have a lot of money and we're giving out 22% pay raises. Is this are we campaigning already? Are we 18 months from election season and like we're campaigning?
No question that she's campaigning. Hey, first of all, she's already announced her candidacy.
That's right.
And with the way money is being shifted around, as you were talking about in another segment, you know, there's a lot of miscellaneous line items. You know, that dog just doesn't hunt in the real world. You know, I'm accustomed to working with construction budgets. There's no such thing as a miscellaneous line item. You may have a 10% contingency relative to the total loan value, but you're not going to have a miscellaneous line item. Every cent needs to be accounted for. This county government needs to run like a business. The taxpayers have a right to know where their tax dollars are going.
It's extremely hard to follow the truth when you have examples such as Watipkin, where the public found out about it on a Facebook post about the Watipkin.
You mean like Shadow
State
Hills?
Park. Getting to Shadow Hills. You have Shadow Hills, that the safari at the quarry, which the public found out about on a Facebook post. You have if you have ever spoken publicly against the executive or some of her desires in this county, you were blocked from her Facebook page. You don't have to have ever made a comment on that page, but you are blocked from it. So this information is put out, but it's not put out for the entire public to see. She's conducting government business.
It's very selective.
Selectively on a private Facebook page.
Yeah, and she's not using her official one because legally she can't block people.
Right.
But she is, and I've asked her at her press conference last July, why don't you use the official one to announce this? And she goes, I'll look into it.
Yeah.
Now, listen, I'm going to give her credit for one thing. I think she is a very smart and cunning politician. The thing is, she's playing politics with House money that we earned. And I'm not okay with that. I wasn't okay when Bob Culver was doing it. And I'm a Republican, you're a Republican. I'm not okay with this stuff. This is not about parties. This is about what's right and what's wrong. And we're allowing party politics. We're allowing whether or not you're for Donald Trump to matter. We're or letting it matter if you're for or against Westmore. Listen, more of your day-to-day life is decided here locally.
Yes.
And if you don't believe that, wait 4 more years when your property taxes start going up and your services start going down, because we have misappropriated, as even our county council has said, more and more funds.
One thing I've learned over the past couple of years, that here on the local level, party has nothing to do with anything.
Yeah,
you know, the people who help to produce our show or appear on the show, we're from all different parties. Yeah. But we seem to have a lot of agreement on local issues. We may vary widely at the national and often at the state level, but here locally, it's easy to be a fiscal conservative, and why we have a Republican county executive who claims to be a conservative, I'm sorry, I just don't see it. These are not conservative policies. You know,
Do we think that our current county council has the ability to ask enough questions, and does the charter allow them to hold the executive accountable for misappropriation of funds or even just lack of transparency?
I do not think that the charter grants enough authority to hold the county executive responsible for what they do. It needs to be done, but there's no teeth in the charter that allows the council to do anything but say, well, you shouldn't have done that. They can't enforce it.
No.
And I will give you the classic example right now. The legislation which was passed and went into effect on March the 10th, that all county vehicles must have a county sealed decal on both sides of the car, is still not being followed by the executive. As of Friday, April the 25th, I believe, Friday was the 25th, still not being followed. The magnets come on and off that county vehicle.
Well, the 70-some thousand Tahoe.
Yes.
I mean, listen, this is not your per capita expense for vehicles in our county. This is, we're paying for it for her to drive, and she's not even following
that
the rules.
legislation requires that it be permanently affixed. Look, it may seem like a small thing, having a decal on a county-owned vehicle, but it's not a small thing when you take a look at the big picture and how frequently this executive violates the charter. And it's not a small thing when the county council fails to do what they can to enforce, the ordinances that they pass and to enforce the charter. There is more that they can do. In this case, defund the county executive's county vehicle. I've got no issue with that.
Yeah, but she'll just take somebody else's.
Well, but
she'll take the deputy administrator's vehicle, which is parked in the parking lot, because we no longer have a deputy administrator that we never should have had in the beginning.
Well, it may not be the final fix, but it will get voters' attention when the council goes through these kinds of motions. The biggest problem we have in this county right now, in my opinion, is the fact that the county council consistently does not hold the county executive accountable for her actions. And the lines have been crossed so many times.
Well, she has promised to run. I mean, if it is election season, she has promised to run with a slate of candidates. And I know we debated this at Question A, and I'm fine with the fact that the voters elected to continue with an executive form of government. But you have one branch that does not have the ability to check the other one, or even has a whole slate of candidates that will abide by whatever that one person wants to do.
Which to me is terrifying.
We're in trouble.
Look, you take a look at the larger problems in the state of Maryland. We're a one-party state. They have essentially their slate of candidates in Annapolis. Well, here in Wicomico County, if the county executive runs with a slate of candidates for county council, then we have the same problem locally. Only one voice is going to be heard in concert with one another, and opposition will have no say. In fact, from what we've seen, the county executive will try to crush opposition by any means necessary.
Yeah, even legally.
That scares the heck out of me.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate all your insight. Budget season's here. now is the time for folks to either show up, and voice their concerns or put up with whatever decisions are made.
You better start paying attention.
Yes, or watch it on PAC 14. If you can't attend, at least watch it. See how some of your money is being spent, where it's being spent, and email somebody. If you don't have the time to come to a council meeting,
rattle some keys.
Let some people know how you feel.
Well, thanks for watching this episode of Open Agenda. We'll be back next week with another new episode.
I know what I'm doing, man.